Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unfuck Your Mind. I'm your host, Zach Lyotis. And in today's podcast, I have Bryan Hardy. Bryan is a holistic nutritionist and integrative wellness coach, specializing in optimizing digestive function, improving mood, and reducing inflammation so that the body can recover and adapt to the stresses of modern life. He hosts the Redefining Reality podcast, speaks at events, has a private practice for health coaching clients, and is involved in the natural health and cannabis markets as a product creator and business developer. Bryan recognizes that the chronic mental and physical health issues that are plaguing men today are largely a result of disconnecting from self, others, and nature. Hence, he holds these as a foundational in his own self-care, private practice, and within the men's circle that he's regularly engaged in. Welcome, Bryan, to the podcast.
Thank you. This is very exciting, and I'm stoked to be here.
I'm excited that you're here because this all came to me to start this Awakened Men's Monday podcast, and you are the first guest on this podcast. So it means a lot to me that you stepped in your power, and really giving other men and even women the opportunity to learn about our divine masculine and what they're up to and how we could support one another. Because I find that when we support one another, the energy becomes more potent and the world starts healing on a whole different vibrational frequency. And this is what 2019 and beyond is really all about. So thank you for that.
My honor, my pleasure.
So I love what you're doing. And I always go off just people's bios and what they're talking about, but I want to talk about inflammation.
Yes.
I think inflammation is extremely important to discuss because people don't realize inflammation. I'm a former colon hydrotherapist, so I got to see a lot of fecal matter with inflammation attached to it and all the things that it could create within your mind, body, and spirit. But how can we relate that to a man going through inflammation as well?
Yeah, so when your body's inflamed, and most commonly these days your gut is inflamed, then your brain is going to be inflamed as well. And none of your cellular processes are going to be working. Now, what this translates to in practical everyday terms is that you're going to experience brain fog. You're not going to have the energy that you want or that you even are aware of is a possibility for you. You're not going to recover as well from exercise. You know, you see men getting into their 30s, 40s who have been sort of weekend warrior athletes, and they're just not bouncing back the way they used to in their 20s, right? And they're feeling like, oh, I'm getting older. And a lot about what that getting older is, because I do believe it's a choice, and we can age and sort of almost age in reverse and regenerate ourselves as we go. But a lot of what that getting older is the result of a long-term chronic inflammation that's breaking down our joints. It's breaking down our ability to take in nutrients and to get out waste. And so that sort of stress, which is put onto us in the modern world through our food, through water, through the air we breathe, through the Wi-Fi routers and the cell phones, like all of that is contributing to our overall picture of stress and chronic inflammation. And so it's fundamental that we look at that and we develop an anti-inflammatory lifestyle so that our bodies, which are self-healing, self-regenerating, amazing organisms, so they can function and thrive and do what they're designed to do.
Yeah, I love how you got on that, because it's true. People don't realize inflammation as it actually hurting your joints, because inflammation is not really spoken a lot these days. You know, it's like osteoporosis, or you need to take vitamin D, or you take more calcium. And the whole inflammation aspect, I find, is totally being missed out. So how could one stay away from becoming so inflamed and not having this foggy, I keep on getting foggy brain, foggy thinking, low energy?
Yeah, so there's many, many things you can do. The easiest, most foundational things that are free to all of us as human beings on the earth are grounding. So that's getting outside. It's harder in the wintertime when you're in a place like Canada. Getting outside, getting your bare skin on the grass, in the dirt, in the water. You can also have that set up in your home with a grounding pad to electromagnetically connect you. And the earth is essentially a giant, free, abundant source of antioxidants. And so that's the most foundational source of discharging some of the excess stress that all mammals forever have had access to. Until we started wearing shoes and driving in cars and disconnecting ourselves, we had access to that. So that's number one. Drinking lots of pure water, right? So getting hydration, cellular hydration, to flush the toxins, to flush the metabolic byproducts, to flush the inflammatory sort of residues that our body produces naturally. And then focusing on real food, right? Real food, not refined stuff, getting away from the sugars, focusing on just clean vegetables, clean protein, healthy fats, and herbs and spices, which by their very nature are very, very potent anti-inflammatories. Things like curcumin from turmeric, ginger, garlic, rosemary, all of these, oregano, pretty much any herb or spice is very, very rich in healing compounds. And so having those in your lifestyle, in your day-to-day, is the base that we all need to strive for and to integrate. And then from there, there's supplements, there's CBD, there's, lasers and different devices. Like right now, I have a cold laser on my knee because I tore my meniscus a while back. So these different devices, different light, infrared light, all these things can help to speed up recovery, speed up cellular functioning, and allow us to clean up the damage and hence the inflammation that is a result of our lifestyles.
See, I like that you spoke about cellular, because I'm getting cellular regeneration. And I think that's really important to regenerate our cells in order for optimum health and really connectivity. And it looks here, I like when you say it's a disconnection from self, inflammation, disconnection from self. So could you just bring me there? Because I do have a lot of other questions, but I'm going to backtrack in a second. But the regeneration of cells is extremely important, and the connection of self. So bring us to that part.
Yeah, I mean, we can experientially go there. And for everyone listening, if you're not driving a car or operating some sort of machine, we can just close our eyes for 30 seconds and take a deep breath, expanding the belly, expanding the ribs, really just coming home. Continue that a little bit more, breathing nice and deep, filling up all the capacity of your lungs. One more, nice and deep, expanding the belly, the ribs, the chest. The breath is the foundational connection point to the self. It's what yoga teaches. It's what ancient traditions for millennia have taught. As long as you can breathe, you can remain connected to and in control of your physiology and in connection to your own body, your own mind. And presence, right? If you're not present, how can you be connected to yourself? If you're not present, how can you be connected to another? How can you be connected to a tree or a plant or, a garden or your pet? Any of these things. It starts with presence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's difficult for a lot of men to be in that present self. And that's why I feel like, even with women as well, but women have a way to kind of bring themselves. They have that natural instinct, that nurturing natural instinct. And as men, and they're protectors as well, but men have that same intuitive feeling, but they've always been taught to disconnect from it, right? Because men are not allowed to show emotion. Men are not so-called allowed to show weakness, whatever weakness may be, a pattern or belief that was imprinted in you. So I feel like a lot of men have had to let go of that connection to self because of their upbringing. So just as breath alone could bring you there.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true, right? And it's something that I've had to work through a lot in my own life and my own healing, or my own reconnecting and integrating to who I am as a human and as a man. Because you're right, our society and our education system are just not set up for that, right? They don't honor the individual. They don't honor the intuition. They don't even teach or recognize spirit and the amazing miracle that this life is. And so when you have these things come up, right, whether it's tears or whether it's anger or whether it's whatever it might be, that's an uncomfortable emotion that a teacher or a parent doesn't want to properly deal with in the moment, they'll shut you down, right? They'll say, don't do that. Or they'll say, good boys don't do that. Or, boys don't cry, suck it up, or whatever the thing is that then discredits your experience. So you're confused, you're invalidated, and you are shamed or guilted in some fashion for this most natural reaction that's coming through your body. That you just can't have, most of us, unless you're born some sort of enlightened being, you have no context, you have no understanding of what's going on. It feels very foreign. It feels very betraying in a sense, right? Especially if it's like your parents or someone who's your caregiver, right? This source of what should be a source of unconditional love and acceptance and support is then against you, right? And that makes a mark. And those wounds go deep, and particularly if they're, if they happen during your most formative years, right, when your brain is most malleable and you're just starting to understand the physical world, and so that will continue, right, unless you, at some point, wake up or bring the awareness that you would like to shift those things, that it's even possible to shift those things, and that those things, those ways of being that are normal in our society are actually incredibly dysfunctional and incredibly disconnected from what it means to be a healthy human being, right? They're anti-life in a sense, and our society is built on that foundation, which is a big pill to swallow for a lot of people. It's not an easy pill to swallow, and that then sort of can serve to initiate you, which is another area of life that men, I think, is really the root of a lot of this, is the lack of initiation ritual. But these crises, these challenges, these wounds can serve to initiate us into a deeper understanding of ourselves and a deeper connection to ourselves and a deeper grounding in who I am, for instance, as a man. But it's not easy work, and it is not pretty most of the time, and it requires a lot of patience and a lot of compassion and a lot of support from a community of like-minded people and more experienced people who have been through it, right? So all of those things, it's why we have the perfect storm that we have today that's resulting in unprecedented amounts of mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, suicide, particularly among young men. Right? These things are at like epidemic levels, and there's reasons for it. There's very good reasons for it. When you look at colonial history and how, our shift from hunter-gatherer tribes to, civilized slaves in a sense, right? With the advent of agriculture. And so these things go very deep, and they're very ancient, a lot of these wounds. And unless there's consciousness brought to it and awareness brought to it, it'll be mindlessly passed down, or they have been mindlessly passed down from generation to generation until the present day, where we have a ton of awareness that's growing each and every day. The fact that we're having this conversation and people are going to be listening to this, it's a time of unprecedented awakening and discovery, and the ability to rewrite what is acceptable, what is desirable, what is a man, what is healthy human behavior. And so I celebrate where we are today and recognize that there's still a lot of people who are in the midst of really intense suffering and really intense feelings of isolation and depression and desperateness. And that I think it's only through community and slowing down to even take stock of the situation that we have a chance of sort of rebalancing.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, to slow down and check in with yourself, because everyone's story, I find, is going to be so different on how they define a man. And because you're defining yourself and you're defining your own story and you're recognizing parts of yourself. So you might not have the same definition of the man. Everyone has a certain definition, but your visual of yourself could be so different compared to someone else's visual of yourself. So there's no right or wrong here. It's just how you feel from, on a men's perspective. That's how I feel on a woman's perspective, but I want to get the men's perspective on that. Would you say that's the way it kind of goes on the masculine side as well?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, there's definitely, and I can only truly speak to my experience, but there's definitely it's a subjective experience, of course, right? And I think it's very universal, certain aspects of a man's experience, a biological man's experience. And unfortunately, we exist in a culture today, or fortunately, depending how you look at it, where there's a lot of seemingly confusion around gender, and people claiming that gender doesn't exist and that it's a social construct, and that if you choose that you're a woman, if you declare I'm a woman, even if you were born with a penis and testosterone and all of the physical biological characteristics that we know are male, right? Not masculine, because masculine is more of an energetic principle in my view, but male, then you are a man biologically, at least. If psychologically you don't identify as that, that's fine. But you can't negate the physical, biological reality of this vessel. And understanding how this thing works and how men function differently from women, and how hormones function, and how testosterone functions, right? Testosterone is a hell of a drug. And I think a lot of women, particularly those that aren't, because some women are naturally very high testosterone, and you can recognize them. They're driven, they put on muscle very easily, they're amazing athletes, they're usually more young, right? They're out there, they're leaders, they're killing it in the business or athletic world. So they can identify it, but most women who have more normal, we'll say, levels of testosterone will never know the extent to which that drives men's behavior, right? Because you are literally, and this is nature's wisdom to help us reproduce. You can literally become like possessed by these feelings, these intense feelings, and these intense urges to procreate, or to conquer, or to dominate, or to feel accomplished, right? Or to feel like you're achieving, like you have value. Like for men, for myself, a lot of the way that I've derived value, and that I see a lot of my brothers derive value from themselves, not saying it's right or wrong, is through achieving, right? Is through proving ourselves, is through doing something, physically doing something, and making it through challenges, and the sense of purpose, and the sense of, you really, you put it out there, you went for it. That is something that I would, say is part of the identification as a man, right? It makes you feel like a man. Because those are, these very hardwired biological instincts and biological patterns that have kept us alive and kept us useful to our tribes through the ages.
Yeah, yes. That's crazy. And it's true, right? Women go through the same instinct as well, but I think it's at a different level. But we're here to talk about men. So I want to stick to the men, the sacred men, or the divine masculine, or whoever it may connect with. But everyone has a journey, and everyone's journey is totally different. But for those that are seeking now awareness, and I feel like you've been on this journey for a while now, for those that are seeking to become more in tune, and you do it through food, you do it through movement, you do it through connectivity with oneself, what would you tell that person that's seeking to create more awareness in their life? What are some steps that you would give them in order to be able to awaken different parts of themselves?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I think starting to journal can be very, very useful, right? So getting your thoughts out of your head and onto paper, that can just help to clear a lot of confusion and a lot of overthinking or overanalyzing. Because I know for myself, I spent many of my years, and this is the pattern, right? When you get one of those, wounds, as we called it, as a young child, you become invalidated or you become repressed in some way, you tend to shift out of your body and into your head, right? You sort of retreat into the intellect, and our education reinforces that. And so getting back out of the head into the body is the journey for many, many of us, and really the journey of human beingness, right? Is living how embodied can we be? And so starting by clearing the head, right? So journaling is fantastic for that. Going off in nature, no cell phone, no distractions, no goals, just going for a walk in the woods and seeing what you see, right? Seeing what birds you see, what sounds you hear, what smells there are, the texture on the bark of the tree, right? All these different things, just awaken your senses, tuning into your senses to really see the richness of everything that's around you. Meditation as well can be great, right? But for a lot of people, getting them to sit down and quote unquote meditate is not going to be so easy at the beginning. So that's why I say go for a walk in the woods, right? Or just sit on the base of a tree for 5 minutes. Just sit. You can have your eyes open. You can whatever. Just sit there and just pay attention. And then the last thing would be to seek out a men's group that meets regularly someplace near where you live, right? Because those are the kinds of places where you're going to find brotherhood, and you're going to find support, and you're going to find men of all walks of life and ages and stages that will be able to offer perspective, that will be able to offer support, that will be able to, lovingly challenge you if you're caught up in delusion, right? All these things that are so fundamental and so important to you becoming and expressing your truest, highest self, right? All those things, like, we can't do it by ourselves. We are social beings. We are social creatures. We need touch. We need hugs. We need eye contact. We need to share space. We need to break bread, as it were. We need to really get in spaces together and using that shared intention and that shared power of the mind, of the heart, reconnect to our humanness.
Yeah, and I love that. I love right now, because it is a sacred divine masculine that's rising right now. I feel it, that there is a lot of support, and I love that men are supporting each other. But how is it that, a woman could support a man going through this process too? Because I find that when we support one another, we become activated on a whole different level. So how is it that maybe a girlfriend or a sister or your mother or anyone out there, a friend even in general, could support a man going through this process?
Yeah, well, before I share what's coming up, I just want to point towards teachers that are far wiser than I on these subjects, that people can dive deeper into, and who I've learned a lot from and owe a lot of my knowledge from. So it's people like John Gray, right? The author, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, like that whole thing. He has tons of books. He's an amazing speaker. He's a true master, I believe, in relational dynamics, as well as a guy named John Wineland, or his teacher, one of his former teachers, David Data. Those three guys will teach you pretty much everything you ever need to know about being a man, being in a relationship, supporting each other, understanding each other. So the people who want to dive deeper, definitely check out those names. But in terms of easy, practical stuff that's worked in my life, for women to be more patient with the men in their lives, to understand that we don't read minds, most of us very well. And so when it seems so blatantly obvious that we should just know what it is you're thinking or what it is, you need, it's not the case. We oftentimes, myself, really benefit from clear, direct instruction, clear, direct questions, right? And also, men need time by themselves, right? Particularly if you're coming straight from work or you're coming straight from a very demanding day, you need that unwind time, right? Even 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, if you have it, to go for a walk, to go to the gym, to do something, get out of work mode, get into your body, ground yourself, move some energy, and then come back and connect with your partner or your spouse or, your sister or whoever it is, a friend. Yeah, whoever it is. But so building in those little breaks in the day, building in those transition points in the day when you're switching from sort of your livelihood to your relationships. And yeah, having patience, having compassion, understanding that because men many times aren't given much in the way of emotional intelligence training, that it's harder for us to feel and to understand feelings and to feel safe expressing our feelings, right? I know I'm fantastic at numbing myself, right? Just cutting off, numbing, pushing through. I'll deal with it later. I'll figure it out. Just suck it up, push through. It's a very easy thing for me to do because I was, trained that way. And that served me in many cases in my life when I had to push through or when I had to be strong in a difficult situation. And that has stifled me emotionally and made it harder to connect with partners and harder to feel like it's safe for me to express some of the more vulnerable, challenging feelings that might come up. And so, yeah, just holding, and this goes for both, both sexes, both genders, just holding each other with a compassionate patience, and a desire to, assist, right? The desire to understand, right? Not necessarily to be right, because I know I've been addicted to being right many times in my life, but rather to be interested in, being helpful, right? And understanding as best we can, understanding where our partners and other people in our lives are at, how they're feeling, what they're thinking, how they perceive a situation or something that we said, right? And so it's really, slowing down and practicing clear communication is really, I think, an awesome place to start.
Yeah, and I like that you said that because really at the end of the day, there's tons of books out there, but this is about having a personal experience and men learning from men and really going through that process together. And, books do have a life of their own, but it's a matter, I find a lot of men learn, and it's women too, but we learn from other people's stories more than books. I have people say, oh, I read that book, but nothing happened to me. Well, you read the book, but you didn't put the action into the book that you were guided to do. So that's why that's why this whole thing came to life, I believe, for me was I want to hear what men are doing out there so that women could actually be of service as well. And I could hear a woman saying like, I do enough for my man and I do this. And it boggles my brains. At the end of the day, your man is not a robot. Your man is not just there to provide you with what you need. You need to provide him with what he needs in order to make things actually congruent with one another and have that, that interwoven energy between each other. The line that I can't stand, and men might love this and women are going to hate me for this, but I'm just going to speak my truth and I don't care. But a happy wife is a happy life is a bunch of bullshit, if you ask me. I really hate that line more than anything because at the end of the day, how about, making him happy? How about making the both of you guys happy? And when I hear women say this to me, a happy wife's a happy life. And I say to myself, that is the most crocked up bullshit if you ever asked me. And this is why it drives me nuts because women have these imprints that men should bow down to you. But sweetheart, guess what? It takes two to tango. And when you bow down to each other, the energy, the sexual pleasures, the desire for one another could be so combustible in that sense. So I want to hear what men have to say when it comes to this. And that's why this whole show series idea came to me. And that's why, women need to start becoming aware of this. And I know that women, there's a lot of woundedness going on in women. There's woundedness going on in men. But men had to hold on to this and women had to hold on to it. Men a little longer. Now it's starting to come through where men are standing in their power and wanting to express themselves more. I have clients that come to me that, they're going through divorce. I deal with a lot of divorce clients. But it's the man that's standing up and saying, you know what, I don't appreciate the way she treats me. Well, then say something. Don't hide from it. Say something. And it's like, well, what do I say? It's like she's not listening. Well, make sure she listens, right? And it's this broken communication. And that's where I think that there's such massive disconnect in society when it comes to men and women is that women think that a man should be able to read her mind, and a man just like exactly what he said. Give me clear questions. Tell me exactly what you want, you know? And that's the beautiful part of it. And I need women to, not that I want women to recognize that, because a woman thinks a man should know everything, but a man's like, you know, cut me some slack here. And that's why I think I have a pretty good balance between masculine and feminine energies. And that's why I think the universe made me do these sort of things to support both sides, because it's not about he's better than you or you're better than him. It's that you guys could be so much better together in harmony with one another.
Yes. Yes. And it's in that understanding of how we tick and how we think and how we work, and our rhythms, our hormonal rhythms, our, you know, what we are essentially designed to do and to thrive in, right? Women tend to be more nurturing, tend to be better communicators, tend to be more, organized in many ways, right? At least in my experience. And
I wouldn't say they're better communicators. I'm going to take that away from you.
Yeah, well, maybe not. They seem to be more communicative. You know, when they get together, when I see women together, right, they are chatting. Everyone's talking, lots of interplay, whereas men are very happy to sit and watch a sports game and like barely talk, you know.
But you guys communicate totally different though. There's a whole different communication there. But and it's interesting that you say that women are chatty when they're together. But is there really purpose in what they're saying? Or are they just like blurbing things out, right?
Well, the quality of the conversation, right, is to be determined, of course. And none of this is set in stone, right? And I really do see that as we integrate more of this balance, right, that all of us can hold both, right, can hold both sides and can tap into whatever that moment calls for. But it's really like for me, understanding that we are living in a world that is not set up for us to thrive, having that as the base level understanding, right? That going to a job and working your life for a mortgage and being in all this debt and doing stuff that you're not interested in, you know, having bosses, having people that you don't want to really be around. If that's the situation that someone finds himself in, then they have to take extra care to slow down when they're not at that job and to really, you know, connect with themselves and love themselves and take care of themselves so they have any chance of feeling like a balanced, clear thinking individual. Because so many times the stress builds up and builds up and builds up, and you're never present. You're always trying to avoid it. You're always trying to, you know, eat something or smoke something or have sex or, you know, zone out in front of the TV or in front of YouTube or whatever the thing is. That's a barrier to connection. And I know for myself, one of the very best things that ever happened to me was that I had a previous partner, and I was in a place, this was a few years back, I was in a place of pretty much perpetual anxiety, and I was trying to make it work with starting my own business, and I was driving Uber at the time to help pay some of my base bills and doing little side gigs and trying to develop my clinical practice. And me and my girlfriend had very different sort of ideal rhythms. So she was like, wanted to stay up late and make love in the wee hours of the night and, you know, like listen to music and do all these things. And I'm like, I want to be asleep by like 10 p.m. because I got to wake up at 5, drive Uber for 5 hours, and then do my own business. And it built so much resentment in me. I allowed it to build up because I wasn't expressing these things and I wasn't recognizing that I'm not in a place to really show up for this relationship. That that relationship ended up ending in a very quite sudden and traumatic fashion, which then opened the door, just as the universe is perfect, as you know, as it all unfolds, it opened the door for me to attend what was called a Vision Initiation Path Gathering, week-long retreat, where I got a taste of a sort of more traditional indigenous American, this was Lakota tradition, with the Eight Shields organization, an amazing organization. And they were doing this retreat, and the timing worked out, and everything worked out for me to be there. So much so that I was actually supposed to be leading a retreat with my past partner at that same time. Mm-hmm. And so that fell apart, lost money, feelings were hurt, but then this new opportunity arose. And I went to it, and it just rocked me and humbled me and slowed me down and reconnected me to myself and to what's important. It was essentially a week of, listening to ancient stories and getting teachings about everything from the sweat lodge to the moon to, connecting with nature to their creation story to initiation, right? And what is initiation and why is it so essential, right? Why are rites of passage practiced in all traditional cultures, and why are they not practiced in modern culture, and what implications does that have, and what effects does that cause, both psychologically, physically, socially, spiritually, for us not to have that. And so that for me, and I was 24 or 5 at the time, and traditional cultures would initiate boys into men at like 13, right? 13, 15, 16, when puberty hits, you're a man in those ways of seeing things, right? And we just don't have that. So here I was, 24, 25 years old, and having a lot of what you might refer to as boyish or uninitiated tendencies, right? I was very selfish in some ways. I was self-destructive in some ways, right? I wasn't grounded and matured in my connection to people outside of me, right? And to have that sort of sense of respect and honor and reverence for my community, right? Most of us don't have real community these days. And so we get this over individualistic achievement, addicted culture that is just breeding chaos, is breeding mental instability, is breeding, traumatic relationships and traumatic interactions, right? Dehumanizing each other for the sake of what? Money, for the sake of control, for the sake of dominance, for the sake of feeling like you're worth something because you won in some game that doesn't really even matter. So it's, it goes super deep, and, reestablishing modern rites of passage for men and boys is something that I think it is happening. There's things like the Mankind Project that have a warrior weekend that I've yet to attend, but I really look forward to that serve as that point of being humbled, being challenged, being pushed to your limits, and then being on the other side of that, being utterly supported and utterly accepted by your brothers and by that community of other men who have paved the way for you to be a man. Because so much of what it means, I think, to be a man is socially determined, right? And so depending where you grew up, how you grew up, all those things are going to have an impact. And they're going to form the basis of your capacity to show up for yourself, to show up for your woman or your partner or whoever, your business or your passions or your dreams. And so I think that's like really the root of a lot of this, right? Is this disconnection from ritual, from ceremony, from community, from rites of passage, that breeds this emptiness. And then culture markets name the bullshit of choice that wants to fill that emptiness and sell you something. And so, like I said, it's very exciting that we are in this point where people are disillusioned enough with the old way, and it's breaking down, and it's too painful, and it's too hard to try and pretend to just, put on the mask. Oh, everything's fine. Right. Yeah. And just, and just pretend and be fake and be depressed. Right. It's like the rates of antidepressant use and drug use and addiction of all kinds, food addiction, sex addiction, TV addiction, porn addiction, everything in the world to distract and disconnect ourselves.
Yeah, so true. I love that you covered so much there. So take us through a little journey of how you work with, do you just work with men, or do you work with men and women?
I don't just work with men, but it's actually funny. About 3 days ago, I was doing sort of a clarity process and determining who is it I'm best here to serve. And it was like 45 to 60-year-old men was the kind of person, the kind of clientele, the kind of individual who I have the tools to serve and to help support and inspire. That said, in clinical practice, of course, if I'm referred to a female client, I'm going to help her as best I can, right? Because so many of the foundational things when it comes to healthy living are universal. But I definitely am moving more and more into a space of supporting men primarily, and holding that sort of a space to help them just recover from life, from injuries, whether it's sports, whether it's, various other accidents or so forth, and feel their best, feel like themselves, feel the vitality and the passion and the energy that is just waiting to be claimed, right? Just waiting to be embodied and owned and accepted.
That just sounds so beautiful. I love that you're doing that. Our men need it. Our men need it, especially the age group that you're doing it at, 45-year-olds. They need it. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm not saying it in a way that's, no one else has problems, but it's that time for the awakening. I'm a 73 child. I'm that 45-year-old, so I get it. I understand it. And now it's time that we step into ourselves. I've been at this for 20 years within myself. So, for those that are starting out, it's important, especially I like the fact that you're doing the whole food aspect of it and the, spiritual aspect of it, which is exactly what we are, and bringing balance into the mind, body, and spirit. So thank you for being of service and helping the divine masculine rise. And I know that you had to go through your own process of rising in order to awaken to where you are today. So, I bow down to that as well, because it is work. It is hard work. It is the truth of who you are to come up and to awaken that. It is hard to deal with the shadow or to deal with the ego. So kudos to you for your journey. Kudos to you for continuously holding, that sacred space for the divine masculine to rise. So thank you for that.
Yes, you're so welcome, and thank you for the acknowledgement and the honor and the praise. It really, the more I do this work and the more I share and the more I connect with other people, it's made clear that this is some of the most important work that I can do, and that there's such a need for it. And whether it's conversations like this or being able to support friends of mine in whatever way it is, right? I feel so fulfilled when I'm able to do that. And it really reminds me, this is why I'm here. This is why we're here. This is why human beings are here, is to help each other and support each other along the journey of, growth and healing and integration. Like, that's why we're here, regardless of what we might be conditioned to believe, right? So thank you. Thank you.
It sounds so amazing. So for anyone that is looking for assistance in connecting with your mind, body, and spirit as a whole, because that's what exactly you are. You are a whole. You're not a half. You are a total whole. You're not broken. You're not lost. You just need to totally rebirth and really redefine who you are, change your story, and recognize the true essence of your divine birthright, and to really connect to that sacred self that you are. And you might not see it, and you might not recognize it right now, but when you borrow someone else's lenses to recognize the truth of who you are, to step out of that shadow, that veil, that false belief or the imprints that you've been, implanted since a child, you start to see something more beautifully defined within yourself. So if you feel connected anyway, to connect with Bryan or to get his message, or even to go onto his podcast, Redefining Reality, jump on there, see what it's all about. Even for women that want to direct their son somewhere or their husband somewhere, we all are here for a reason. We're all here for a purpose. Let's all just work with one another and connect and grow and expand, because once you start recognizing how explosive that could be, you will want more of this to happen for society. So Bryan, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed our conversation here and everything that you're doing. And to all the listeners, thank you for listening and really taking everything in and embracing in that change, just like, you have, Bryan. So thank you once again. And I hope to have you guys back here on Awakened Men's Monday and next week on this podcast. Thank you, everyone. Have yourself a great day. Bye for now.
Take care. Thank you.
You're welcome.